may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, I know y'all never like these videos, but I think that they are so important for me to come out here and make, where we talk about 5 players that I think we need to be avoiding putting in our starting lineups in week 13. This video, we're going to do it at the wide receiver position, but before we get into it, please go down to the comment section, ask any fantasy football questions that you have, and also guys, even if you do not have a question, go down there and answer some others. We are all a part of the flock. We need to be asking and answering each other's questions, and we need to be making sure that we're gearing up for the fantasy football playoffs, because I don't know how many times I have to say this. I want us to be going out there and taking home those trophies, taking home that money. And yeah, the best way we can do that is by all working together. I am not the flock. We are all a part of the flock. So please go down to the comment section, find some questions, give them your opinion, because your opinion is just as valuable as mine. All right, let's get into our first wide receiver, someone that I told y'all not to start this past week, but actually had a pretty decent game, T. Higgins. Okay, with T. Higgins, yes, I understand. He is one of the most talented rookie wide receivers that we have seen over the past 5 years. I mean, T. Higgins truly looks like he's on a trajectory to be a star at the NFL level, but the problem is no Joe Burrow. So y'all know I was saying that T. Higgins was a league-winning wide receiver only 3 weeks ago, but without Joe Burrow, this overall Cincinnati Bengals offense is going to have such a hard time moving the ball down the field, where we're not really going to be able to rely on any of these options consistently. Like I said this past week, the reason we wanted to be avoiding Giovanni Bernard is because he was splitting that backfield in a below average NFL offense, so there was no reason to be playing him. And I am still looking at the wide receivers in that same situation. Okay, so here with T. Higgins, I understand. The past week, he put up that production. He helped a lot of fantasy owners get those wins, but the problem is the target share was not necessarily through the roof. And we know that if you are going to be a wide receiver producing on a bad offense, what you need to see is you need to see 30% of those teams' targets. That's what we have with Terry McLaurin in Washington. And T. Higgins just simply does not have that in Cincinnati right now, seeing 5 targets this past week. I mean, Tyler Boyd and AJ Green are both going to have roles that are too big to really allow T. Higgins to be that prototypical alpha wide receiver, soaking up every single target in the offense. And when we know that the targets are going to be low value, when the overall offense is going to stagnate, you really need an abundance of targets if you're going to be able to overcome those two things to be able to make our starting lineups. All right, so now let's get to our second wide receiver, someone that I was so wrong on this year. I almost considered making him in our regret video, but Hollywood Brown. Okay, with Hollywood Brown, I know the matchup's there. He is going up against the Dallas Cowboys, and I know on Wednesday against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he busted off that long play and really helped a ton of fantasy owners go down and get that Week 12 win. But right now, I'm saying that that's not something we're going to be able to rely on consistently, and especially knowing that they're going up against the Dallas Cowboys. While, yes, the Cowboys have a very bad defense, and I know a lot of people are going to want to assume that this is a plus matchup for Hollywood Brown, I'm actually looking at it as a negative matchup in that the Baltimore Ravens should easily be able to dominate this game flat out, and that's going to call for a lot of Lamar Jackson, a lot of J.K. Dobbins, a lot of Gus Edwards, a lot of Mark Ingram, all running the ball to take time off the clock. I really don't think that they're going to be consistently looking to take shots downfield, because there's going to be no reason for them to, because the Dallas Cowboys and Andy Dalton are going to have a very hard time moving the ball down the field and putting up points against the Baltimore Ravens. So here with Hollywood, we've seen so far about 10 bust weeks and 2 solid weeks in fantasy football. This is going to be one of the easiest calls that I'm going to make this week. Please do not overthink it. I know it was extremely fun to watch him play with Trace McSorley the other night, but here with Lamar Jackson, I think the game flow is not necessarily going to make it where Hollywood Brown needs to be an impact player for the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, so now our third wide receiver, looking like he may come back this week, Kenny Golladay. Okay, with Kenny G, I'll say this is a wide receiver that I love. Y'all know I was aggressively targeting him in 2020 fantasy drafts, and every single week that he's been active, I've been wanting to jam him into our starting lineups. But if we take a step back and if we look at what happened last time Kenny G came back from his injury, they really did not let him go out there and play every single snap. I believe the snap count was around 60 to 70% for this offense, which is not necessarily the end of the world when you're looking at a wide receiver that has the talent of a Kenny Golladay playing in an offense like the Detroit Lions, who should be able to move the ball down the field. But the problem here is the matchup. He is going up against the Chicago Bears, and if he was playing 100% of the snaps, if he was not going to be used as a decoy, I would 100% be locking Kenny Golladay into our starting lineups. But the problem here is, one, we don't know if he will be used as a decoy. Two, we don't think he's going to play every single snap for this offense. And three, the matchup's not going to be there, so neither will the efficiency. I think all of those factors combine together to make it where Kenny G is most likely going to be a wide receiver 4 this week, rather than that high-end wide receiver 2 like we come to expect every single week that he's healthy. So I will say, regardless of if Kenny Golladay comes back this week or not, I do not want him in our starting lineups. Also, we're going to wait one more week. We can play him in week 14 for the first week of our fantasy football playoffs because he is that elite talent, because we know that he is going to dominate most defenses. I just don't know if we can say that for sure when he's going to be banged up against the Chicago Bears. All right, so now let's get to our next wide receiver, someone that I love, someone that I've said we can consider starting in our flex spot most weeks, and this is going to be Corey Davis. Okay, Corey Davis is going up against the Cleveland Browns, and the problem here is I just don't expect neither offense to be looking to aggressively push the ball down the field. I think that the pace of play is actually going to be drastically lowered with both teams trying to establish the run, both teams trying to get those points on the ground and control the clock. And here, I think the matchup dictates that with Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and Derrick Henry. There's not going to be any reason for the Tennessee Titans to go out there and continue to drop back and throw the ball to A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. Possibly if we see a big Nick Chubb run early, possibly if we see Baker Mayfield not be one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, like he provided us that play last week where he actually looked decent for the first time all season, then yes, in that one scenario, Corey Davis could be attractive because like I've said so many times before, guys, Corey Davis was a wide receiver that we loved in the 2017 NFL draft class coming out of Western Michigan. Extremely talented, has that exact profile that you'd want to see from a prospect, former top 5 pick as well. And I think that really the only reason he was not able to produce earlier on in his NFL career is Marcus Mariota was one of the worst quarterbacks in the entire NFL. And on top of that, Corey Davis was dealing with his own injuries. So I will say Corey Davis is a wide receiver that I think is definitely worth considering to put in our starting lineup in most weeks. This is just not going to be one of them, with the matchup not necessarily being the best. All right, so now let's get to our last wide receiver that I think we need to be avoiding putting in our starting lineup, and this is going to be Amari Cooper. Okay, so Amari Cooper is going up against the Baltimore Ravens, and yes, y'all know I love Amari. I love the talent, and I've been telling y'all to play him in most weeks. I told y'all to play him this past week, but there are a couple problems here. One, this game is actually being played on a Tuesday, and we know there is so much uncertainty around that Baltimore Ravens situation currently. I still think that there's most likely going to be this game kicked off. Most likely they're going to get everything under control. But knowing that this game's on Tuesday, I think naturally we want to be avoiding these players when they're not going to be in a great matchup. And that's exactly what we have with Amari Cooper going against one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. And like I said earlier on this season, whenever we were having Andy Dalton come back from that concussion, and everybody was assuming that Andy Dalton was going to be the worst quarterback in the NFL and that this Dallas Cowboys offense was going to have no shot at moving the ball down the field. And I said, guys, we have a large sample of Andy Dalton going out there and providing us average quarterback play. We had a very small sample of Andy Dalton looking like one of the worst quarterbacks in the entire NFL. And that was against the Washington football team earlier on this season. And I said he was going to bounce back. But here, I think the matchup's very similar against the Baltimore Ravens, where Andy Dalton is going to be playing against a great defensive line that's going to be able to get to him, put pressure on Andy Dalton. And when that happens, I think maybe we end up seeing a little bit more targets going over to CeeDee Lamb, who's going to be running routes a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. Maybe they get some more manufactured touches, not necessarily looking to get the ball to Amari Cooper consistently. While I think he's their best playmaker, I just think he's not going to be in a situation where he can really thrive in Week 13 based on the matchup. And if we're adding on the fact that if this game has anything go wrong with it in terms of COVID implications, it's being played on a Tuesday, so you're going to have no backup plan. You're really going to be stuck with 0 points. All right, now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, go down there, drop that like, leave that comment. We are live streaming on Friday and Saturday night at 9 p.m. Central, as well as Sunday morning. So please make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have that notification bell on so you know when you go live and you can come in and get your question answered right away. But thank you guys. Really hope y'all enjoyed it and have a great day.